Hey y'all, Boogie Night here. How's it going? And welcome back to Giallo July. Now, before I get started, like the new artwork? No, this is not going to be a new permanent addition to the background. This print just arrived a couple of days ago, and I haven't had the chance to hang it up yet. So by the next entry, it will be gone and hanging up on my wall with the rest of my beautiful prints. Anyway, also, I know I said I was going to do a review of this yesterday, Thursday, watch the movie on Wednesday, but I never got around to finishing the movie. I know I posted about it on Twitter, but long story short, to watch a movie that I want to do a review on, particularly a Giallo film that requires a little more in-depth analysis and thought process compared to another movie, like say just a regular horror or a mystery or something like that, I need to be in the right mind space, and I was not on Wednesday. I was very smoked on Wednesday, and it was also a lousy day. Come to think of it, with the exception of a few things, this week has been stressful and lousy. The three exceptions to the rule are, first of all, yesterday, Lady Lilia has topped 5,000 subscribers on her channel. Lilia, I'm so thrilled for you. That is awesome. Keep it up. 2, on Tuesday, Gab and I were actually able to make some progress in Divinity Original Sin. And 3, I was able to have a good chunk of snarkitude with Namina over the past few days, as well as swapping recipes and other stuff to add to my wide range and list of movies and books. But other than that, I did get around to finishing up watching this movie last night. My head was a lot clearer. I had actually gotten some sleep. I had a good dinner, and I'm glad that I finished watching the movie last night as opposed to watching the whole thing on Wednesday, because my review, A, would have been subpar and shoddy, and B, would have been not dishonest per se, but definitely more forced, and I will be focusing more on the negative as opposed to the big picture. And I'm talking about a movie called The Black Belly of the Tarantula. And no, it has nothing, it's not about giant spiders or anything like that, otherwise I wouldn't have watched it, but I will go into the title symbolism later on. Now, just a quick background, Paolo Cavada was the director and the screenwriter for this. He had a few cult classics that came out in the early and mid-1960s, but as the Giallo subgenre was taking off, he wrote and created Black Belly of the Tarantula, and released it, and it achieved quite a very big cult following, as were a lot of people who followed the Giallo films. It was often compared to Dario Argento's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and I can kind of see why, but I cannot compare any other Giallo director, old or new, compared to Dario Argento, because A, I think he's one of my favorites, as I've said numerous times before, and B, it's comparing apples to atom bombs to compare with any kind of other director to any other sort of director, particularly one on the caliber that is Dario. So maybe it wasn't the best idea for me to start Giallo July off with my favorite director, but honestly I think it was kind of good, because by this I can focus and encourage y'all, the viewer, if you do want to see these movies, to take it from an outsider perspective. That is, a viewer that has not seen an Argento film or anything like that. You focus on this as its own unique film to the Giallo genre. You see what I did there with the alliteration? And sorry, this is going to be kind of a foggy review because I've been up since 4 a.m. I guess. But it really was a good movie, and I'm glad I finished watching it, as well as rewatching the whole thing from the beginning. I watched about half of it on Wednesday and then rewatched the whole thing from the get-go, so it kind of put things into a different perspective. But Black Belly the Tarantula was a good movie. It was definitely unique in its own way. It didn't tap into that supernatural that is associated with an Argento Giallo, so it's kind of got more of a film noir thriller, but it still falls into that horror slasher bit thing. And I'm just going to kind of go into, once again, the plot will be in a nutshell, because I think this is a movie y'all should see. And in fact, as of right now, you should see this before you see The Three Mothers or any of Dario's things, so you can build up to that. Because Paolo Cavada is unique in his own way, down to the audio, the character development, the camera angles, and the cinematography, as well as the plot. but once again, you need to take it from a different perspective. I know. It's about 6 o'clock right now, and I'm drinking iced coffee. I am smoked, like I said. But even throughout today, I've been really excited to talk about this movie, and I hope my enthusiasm for what I'm about to discuss will be conveyed and imprinted onto y'all, so you should see this. I actually saw it for free on Amazon Prime, so if you are an Amazon Prime member, you do have access to seeing this movie, but it's a little more difficult to find, but I will be eventually getting this on DVD via eBay if I can find a good copy. So, like I started off with in Suspiria, let's talk a little bit about the camera angles. And they were very unique as well to the Giallo subgenre. It wasn't as intense as going over the rails or anything like on guide wires over there for a swooping shot, but it was good. There were some over-the-shoulder shots. There were definitely some shots done from a first-person perspective. Not as the main character, not as Inspector Tallini, but as some of the supporting characters or maybe some of the victims. So I thought that was cool because you're seeing what they're running from. There's the head bob going up and down. You have scenes of people walking from afar, which actually, thinking about it, there's one scene where Tallini and his wife are walking through kind of a garden shot, and the camera's kind of panned up a hill, but they're so far in the distance you only see their silhouettes. So with the lighting coming in from the horizon, that kind of enhanced the overall feeling to it. And of course you had the standard still shots, you had the camera following some people around, particularly during a chase scene, which I'll get into later on. But overall, I think it was very well done. Nothing splitting the atom, but it still worked out well for this film. It was gritty, and that fit definitely the whole concept of the way this film was shot. Once again, I considered it almost more of a slasher film noir type. Maybe something I could see Humphrey Bogart doing if he was into more of a gory thing and was still alive at the time of when the Giallo genre was actually in its popularity. But it was still very well done, in my opinion. I think so, at least. The lighting was captured very well between light and dark, between sunlight and shadow during the daytime shots, and even during the nighttime shots. You would get the lights from some of the windows or maybe some of the traffic and street lights, accentuating the facial expressions of the characters, particularly the burnt out and very grim Inspector Tallini, and I think that was well done in my opinion. But that's kind of the cinematography thing. Once again, check it out for yourself. Tying that into the audio portion of it, it definitely didn't have that creepy vibe. It was more of the, I wouldn't say blues, but pieces that were fitting to the time and the place that is, I want to say it was Rome, Italy. There was one shot of a letter being addressed that said Rome, but it could be an outlying village of where it was shot. It could be a different city. It could be Firenze, Florence. I don't know. But it was definitely more of a period piece than, say, something creepy than what like Goblin would do. But you had kind of a feeling of blues and I wouldn't say jazz, but kind of that crossover jazz blues thing in certain scenes, particularly with Inspector Tallini when he's trying to do his investigation, when he's trying to talk to somebody and you can just see the exhaustion in his eyes. But once again, I'm going to talk about characters in a second. I don't want to delve too much into that. Or if there's a certain romance scene between Tallini and his wife or between other characters, a poignant moment, there would be some chanting in the background that would tie into kind of maybe an almost background ambience. But the problem that I had with this music was those were the only two things that were constant through this movie. Occasionally during one or two of the violent scenes, it would change to something very stereotypical, which to me, I can guess that. It doesn't really keep you on your toes. I've heard it before, but that doesn't detract from the overall feeling of this movie, and I'm going to talk about the feeling as well, but after it all kind of ties in together. The characters. I think, for the most part, they were believable. I think Inspector Tallini was probably the most believable out of all of them. When you first see him as a character, you can almost compare him to, who was it? Morgan Freeman, his character, I think that was it. It's been a long time. And like I said, I'm really tired. Morgan Freeman's character from Seven. If I'm wrong, please actually me in the comments below, because I could be wrong, like I said. You see him as washed out. You see him as burnt out. You see that he's not a fan of his work. I don't know if he's been doing it for too long and he's just complacent and burnt out. Show of hands about how that's affected people. I'm just kidding. You see it reflected in his eyes. You see it in his interactions with people that he just doesn't really care. Like he's either looking to jump ship and get a new job or just quit altogether or maybe even retire. I don't know. But that's not to say that he's completely washed out, because he is, very much in love with his wife. And you see the affection and you see the way they care about each other, and you see the way she is supportive of him, even though in more times than not, a lot of their interactions, at the beginning at least, I'm not saying towards the end, when you see the character development a little bit in him, you see him being kind of this, whatever, but she's so supportive over him. And I've seen things like that with my friends and their significant others or their spouses, about if they're down in their luck or they're pissed off or they're upset, whether it's the wife towards the husband or the husband towards the wife or the husband towards the husband or the wife towards the wife. I see that, and I find that more believable in a character. In fact, those were the only two real characters that I felt fond towards and that I felt genuinely concerned about if I thought that they were in danger, because of that bond with each other, of them holding each other, or if he's complaining to her, she's kind of just gently touching him on the arm, or these little things that solidify their relationship via subtlety. And I will get into a couple of other things that I think could have been done without, but it ties into the plot. The rest of the characters I could not find terribly believable. I found them static. I found them cookie cutter. I found them to the point that it wasn't believable just because of how brash and over the top and just stupid that they are personality-wise. It was very reminiscent of a lot of the characters in supporting, I wouldn't even say supporting, but just two-bit fill-in characters from the CSI series. You're like, how can somebody be that big of a douchebag? Or how can somebody be that naive? Are they really missing gray matter, or do they just don't care? And that's a big tie into the plot, but maybe that's what Paolo Cavada was trying to go for, was the lone inspector trying to take the moral high road when everybody else is just being a complete douche. I don't know. But I'm going to think of that as such, and that's actually how it enhanced it. And you do see Inspector Tellini kind of grow personality-wise towards the end, as he feels more determined and motivated to solve this crime, to find out who's killing these people. So there is that, and by the end of it, the passion in his eyes, the determination, and the frustration, really you can feel it if you feel for his character. Once again, you could see if it is static, but not everybody is as passionate about movies, or particularly the Giallo film, as me and quite possibly Josh Wasabi. And he will be, by the way, watching the next movie with me. I did this one solo. What else goes on before I need to go on the plot? Special effects, once again, very well done for its timeline. No CGI, obviously, but the blood and the slashing and the gore were with it, and that sort of thing. So I think that was, fairly well done for its piece and fits in overall with a Giallo. One other thing about the graphics that I think that could have been done without, and once again, this was European, so, things like that possibly work a little bit different. Just a couple of scenes that could have been done without, an over-excessive amount of just character douchebaggery. There was a PG-13 rated sex scene, which, I was cool with watching. I'm not complaining. I'm like, ooh, okay. The base and Chalamet in me is like, hey, she's pretty hot. In fact, there were several scenes where the base and shallow and immature man in me is like, ooh, hello, nurse. But the PG-13 sex scene just kept coming back. Sorry. Just kept appearing throughout other parts of the movie that didn't need to be done. It's like, okay, you see this 2 to 3 minute long sex scene between Inspector Tellini and his wife. Then you see it again a few minutes later. And then when you think it's done, it comes back again. maybe 15 minutes later, I'm like, this doesn't do anything to the plot. It's kind of, once again, it's just kind of at best, and it gives a shot to accentuate the disdain for Inspector Tellini towards his colleagues. Yes, because this tape does appear to all his colleagues, and to the point they're actually coaching him and making comments about his overall technique. This is it's like something Uwe Boll would do, in my opinion. And I'm not comparing Paolo Cavada to Uwe Boll in the least, but I think, once again, that could have been done without it. But other than that, yeah, so let's talk about the plot of this movie in a nutshell. And once again, as much as I'm kind of downplaying it, it was very well done. I'm trying not to just go into too much detail, because like I said already several times, you should really go check it out. But, so the plot in a nutshell is there's a serial killer that is killing various women, and there's no real tie to it. In fact, some parts of this movie, in the beginning, I found distracting and confusing as hell, but it could have just been, in hindsight, Paolo Cavada doing that on purpose to throw you off in a wild goose chase until you get around to the end of the movie. There's a serial killer who is injecting somebody entirely women, in the back of the neck with a needle that paralyzes them. They can't move, they can't speak, they can't blink, but they're not dead. They can feel pain, they can feel experiences, things like that. And while they're still alive, it basically strips them naked, except for their nether regions, and slashes them across the belly from stomach pretty much to chest. And this is kind of in the same way that a tarantula hawk, well, this is the way they did it, even though I am a nerd to the point that's not how tarantula hawks function. But they portrayed as a tarantula hawk being the way that's how they take care of tarantulas. Hence the name Black Belly of the Tarantula. And then you have Inspector Tellini, who is trying to find out why this serial killer is happening. And like I said, he's jaded, he's pissed off, he doesn't really want to keep going with this. But as the movie ramps up and all these different tangents happen and kind of just come to a close at the very end, he's more determined, like I said. He has so many different tangents in the beginning of this plot. It could be because the first victim in the movie, she had a falling out with his husband. He considered her a nymphomaniac, and somebody's blackmailing them with pictures of her hooking up with other men, even though they're divorced. So, of course, he's at fault of that. Later on in the movie, it has something to do with another woman gets killed that has nothing to do with the ex-husband or anything like that. She's killed. Somehow she has ties to a cocaine ring, which becomes another one of Inspector Tellini's tangents. And then the ex-husband goes rogue, hires a different private investigator, the same person that Inspector Tellini hires to try and help him track down the tarantula killer. That's never explained, even though this other PI is an alcoholic and his office basically takes place in a bar. So between the cocaine deal, the husband going rogue, and the just the overall thing, and then of course the nymphomaniac and the blackmail scheme, it gets very distracting. And personally, in the first half of the movie, it could have done without those tangents, or it could have limited them, but by the end of it, I think that is Paolo Cavada, like I said, trying to distract you to make you form your own conclusions for the big plot twist at the end. But I will say this, is that the cocaine goes away, the PI, aka Catapult, kind of becomes second nature, the ex-husband kind of mini arc disappears, so by the second end of it, the second half of the movie, it's more streamlined and tied into the blackmail, that these women are somehow being tied to the blackmail scheme, and that kind of accentuates why the killer is attacking these women, and they also have ties to a spa. So it starts going to this narrow point by the end of it, but I kind of had my thought process on who the killer was, but there were so many suspects towards the latter act of the movie that you can't think about it. You have to kind of go, maybe, which I found very impressive, because normally by the end of that movie, any kind of movie of an mystery or a thriller, or maybe even a giallo, you have your thoughts on who it could possibly be. And I kind of thought I wasn't really thinking about it. I wanted to be proven right, and I was proven right. But like I said, you had to sift through things and go over various ones here and there. But like any giallo film, it definitely is subtle in all these different things. And I think Paolo Cavada did a good job overall, and I think this movie is worth seeing. I'll get it again. I'll watch it again. I don't think it'll be anytime soon, but I would be more than happy to add that to my collection of movies. I think the big thing was the character that is Inspector Tellini. I think watching him grow as a person was what really did it for me. And like I said, all these little things towards the latter act of the movie really made my confidence grow in wanting to see this and wanting to give it a positive review. Once again, this movie didn't split the atom or anything like that, but I think it's worth the watch. So if you're into less supernatural, but still like that horror and slasher aspect of it, this is the movie for you. And even if you do like more of the supernatural ones, this is a different break from the ghosts and the phantoms and the demons and that sort of thing. So overall, I recommend it. But anyway, so that is the second entry for Giallo July. Josh Wasabi and I, like I said, will be watching the third one tomorrow. And I will have at least one more after that. So we are going for the full 4 Giallo films for this month. And if there's any left over, I might go for a 5th one, but we will see. But other than that, let me know what you guys think. But otherwise, you all have a wonderful evening, and I'll catch you in the flip side, all right? Peace.